Jeff Bezos' $1 billion vanity project is back. Is it good? We begin with Michael Sheen talking to a group of orcs. We see a shot of the outside of the fortress they are in, confirming that this is Fordowaith, where Galadriel will go on to kill the snow troll in under 10 seconds. F*** my life. And Adar, played by a new actor. It would seem that Joseph Molly was smart enough to abandon this ship. On Twitter, Molly said he wanted to explore new characters and worlds beyond the Rings of Power. That's good for him. Sadly for me, he was one of the only good parts of Season 1. My interest in this character was solely based off of Joseph's performance, and that is gone, so rip. Turns out Michael Sheen is Sauron. Oh. I wonder what new depths this character will have with this new actor involved. I'm sure he's going to get a lot of screen time. Sauron repeats the not of the flesh but over the flesh line, not once, but twice in this scene. I get it. We all get it. Sauron takes a note out of Lord Farquaad's playbook.
Many orcs will die.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
As Sauron's giving his speech, we see an orc about to unsheathe his blade for the most obvious trying to backstab of all time. Then, Sauron goes on to insult Adar and all of the orcs that he is trying to get to his side. Great job. Sauron then goes on to brutalize the orc that tries to backstab him. Sauron then gets stabbed by the really pointy crown that he genuinely thought Adar was just going to place on his head with no problem. Idiot. Oh, and get this. Sauron then explodes and turns the whole castle into an icicle. I want you to think about that for a moment. Fordowaith is up in the far north, where it already snows and is cold and would produce ice, and they still somehow had to try to make an explanation for the fortress, even though they didn't need to. Somehow Adar doesn't get turned into a popsicle. Convenient. Guess we need him for Season 1 to happen, you know. I get it. To be fair, Adar survived the volcano last season along with everybody else, so f*** it. Who needs stakes and cause and effect? Sauron then, the only way I can really describe this is his blood, like, oozes down into the floor, and he, like, escapes that way? Or is the same black ooze from the tree in Linden last season? I think, maybe? I wish I could explain this better, but I'm just describing what I'm seeing. We get a glorious shot of a New Zealand mountainside, which is immediately ruined by Gloopy Sauron. Sauron comes across a group of humans fleeing from orcs. An old guy in the group starts talking to Sauron, telling him he'll only find death the way they came. Instead of telling Sauron to keep walking, the old guy, for some reason, tries to cheer Sauron up and get him to come with them. And Diarmid, that's his name, I had to look it up, he says he can see that Sauron has suffered and that he can turn towards a new life. We are then shown a pouch around his neck, and we all know what it is, so we can already assume this guy's toast. Listen, no amount of writing here is going to make Sauron and Galadriel running into each other on a raft in the middle of the ocean make sense, okay? Diarmid then gives Sauron a hopeful and motivational speech.
A sure path may crumble, but...
Oh, good lord, here we go again with nonsensical metaphors.
...can lead us someplace better. Someplace good.
Oh, come on!
Or walk on and keep chasing death.
Sauron then proceeds to get on a boat and almost dies, while Diarmid attempts to convince the audience that Sauron could be redeemed. Wow, they really are attempting to try to make Sauron like Walter White, and it is failing miserably. Sauron's evil grew from his original servitude to Morgoth. In the days before days, he was known as Mairon, but I don't know if I'm butchering it or not, so I will stick with his current said name. Sauron was as Eru Iluvatar had created him, good and trustworthy. His greatest virtue was his love of order and perfection, and dislike of anything wasteful. However, this would also prove to be the cause of his downfall, as Sauron saw in Melkor the will and power that would help him achieve his personal ends quicker than if he pursued them alone. However, while Melkor wanted to either control or destroy Middle-earth itself, Sauron's desire was to dominate the minds and wills of its creatures for what he perceived to be their own benefit. To see his designs through, Sauron sought to increase his innate power, and this power in time became the end in itself, so he joined with Melkor. If you wanted to show a flashback of Sauron becoming evil, you should have shown the First Age, otherwise him being simultaneously the boogeyman of Middle-earth while being a big black puddle of goo for centuries is not the way to do it. The Sea Worm decides that Sauron is too disgustingly evil to eat because we need him to meet up with good old Galadriel Gorwith.
No, your kind was a mistake.
No, I don't think so.
You never talked me into it.
The whole opening sequence was showing us a lot of stuff that we really didn't need to see. It seems like Sauron's hidden fortress was just frozen right before Galadriel showed up. If so, that's convenient. It's really the critique the show gets and deserves for condensing all these characters and events into one single point in history. Which leads into the next big problem the writer made for themselves. The prologue scene contradicts the prologue from the previous season. Sauron talking to all the orcs appears to be from right after Morgoth's defeat.
Morgoth is gone.
But it appears not much time has passed between this scene and Halbrand meeting up with Galadriel. It implies that Sauron never had the orcs' allegiance between the fall of Morgoth and Galadriel hunting for him. So how is he able to do all those experiments on the orcs if just him telling them he wants to go to war while insulting them gets him Caesared? Galadriel was looking for a little black puddle in a cave. Did Sauron take up the mantle as the new Dark Lord, or was he killed trying to become the new Dark Lord? The show is trying and failing to pull off both simultaneously. So after that dreadful, unneeded opening sequence, we cut to Galadriel Goebbels chasing young Ned Stark through the woods. Oh dear God, don't give me another close-up of Galadriel riding a horse, I beg of you. So Elrond took the 3 rings right after they were forged and rushed right to Gildaddy after finding out what Galadriel found out when he picked up that paper out of the stream last season? Why did Galadriel just let him hop on a horse to escape to Lindon with the rings in the first place? It's almost like we should have gotten an opening showing these events transpiring instead of what we did get.
Harold Elrond carries 3 rings. A means of halting the fading. And saving our people.
We will discuss the rings once you have answered the question. Now, who is this man?
Yes, Sauron.
Gildaddy lets out some weird noise, which sounds like he's trying to ready his tongue to say Sauron with more R's than Galadriel. I can't roll my tongue at all.
Of all our kind.
He deceived me.
She said it! Sauron the Deceiver! She said it! I clap, guys! 10 out of 10 show!
No, Galadriel, you were blind. Blinded by your own pride.
Hey, okay now, Elrond, you're still not allowed to be this likable. Also, another thing that bothers me about this scene is that they are all elves and speak Sindarin, so why do they keep switching between that and the common tongue? Minor detail, I know, but it still annoys me. Actually, you know what? F it. These minor details become way more noticeable when your show is dog shit.
And what frailty blinded you, Elrond?
Nordinen.
What other part did your failure Khazad-dûm leave us with but they...
You're a soy boy, Elrond.
First off, how do you know this? And failure, if my memory serves me correctly, Elrond succeeded in obtaining the one piece of mithril that was needed to make those 3 rings. Sure, he didn't get the trade deal, but they could always go back and try to renegotiate. But then, you won't believe this. I get it. Okay. I get that they want to set up early on that Elrond is the guy that wants the rings destroyed. That I am 100% fine with. Great idea. Ingrain that into his character early on. But this scene takes a huge turn, and suddenly instead of Galadriel being interrogated for conspiring with the enemy, it becomes Gildaddy and Elrond having an argument because Gildaddy is king, so he is the only one that can make this decision, even though it should be a no-brainer. It sounds like the rings won't save your people, and the whole idea was just Sauron tricking you all into helping him. And since the script and the writers can't allow Elrond to be right, even when he clearly is, I'm not kidding, he literally jumps off the waterfall with the 3 rings.
I wish I were a bird.
We're not even at the 30-minute mark, and they already gave Elrond his own dumbass jumping off a boat into the deep ocean scene. Elves are immortal, not invincible. Whew! Okay, so we leave that doozy of an opening, and we cut right over to Mount Doom, I think? I don't know for sure. Oh, there! Thank you! I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Should have seen the route he took us to get here.
Stop. So we can't giggle, it's a crime scene. Stop it.
You're the one who shot him, I mean...
Sauron just pulls a Jaime Lannister and gets himself captured. Not Benjen, I mean Adar is branding people because f it. Him and the orcs went from finding their own home to committing genocide and slavery. Oh good, they're showing how truly evil the orcs are and how we shouldn't have any sympathy for them. Oh. I am not going to spend much of this review on the Harfoots because they are barely in this episode, and so I am going to save them for episode 2. Not sorry. And after having watched episode 4 recently already, I am definitely not sorry for this. Oh my god, I'm not even halfway through this episode yet. Sauron tries to deceive like he's supposedly good at, but Adar is clearly smarter than Galadriel, so it doesn't work. But then later it will work for some reason. We cut back to Sauron sitting in his cell. Still not a fan of the warg designs at all, but at least this one looks less mentally impaired. Sauron suggests that Adar release him because the elves trust him and he would be able to infiltrate and seek out well himself. Sauron vows to serve Adar, which everybody including Adar should know is a lie. Only smart thing in this scene is Adar sending somebody to follow him, but I still find it hard to believe that Adar would really think Halbrand would keep his word. He already let his people go, apparently. If you wanted this plan to make sense for both parties, you would have had Adar hold the imprisoned Southlanders over Halbrand's head while Sauron feigns caring for them to give Adar a false sense of security, and letting him go while having him followed. Waldrick walks into Sauron's former cell, lamenting over not getting to torture him anymore, and what do you know, we get the payoff that nobody really cared for, with Waldrick getting eaten by Sauron's new pet warg. Sauron is shown riding off on his horse, apparently being able to hear Waldrick shouting in the distance, being eaten by said warg. Then it cuts to Adar just sitting and looking with Gil Daddy in the background singing. It doesn't actually sound too bad, and it's one of those little moments where the show shows promise, which is immediately undercut, not a scene later. We then cut to the Grey Havens, which looked way better in the Peter Jackson movies. Elrond is hiding under a bridge with no scrapes or bruises. Cause and Effect has sailed to Valinor. We are finally introduced to Cirdan the shipwright, who is telling a worker that her woodwork sucks ass. She thanks him for insulting her. Cirdan then looks out into the sunset, which I think is meant to signify that Cirdan can sense Elrond. I think? I don't know how he would know Elrond is hiding nearby. So with no inclination, Cirdan waits until nightfall and comes back to meet with Elrond. Although it may just be a really clunky establishing shot to set up Cirdan longing for Valinor, which isn't a terrible idea if that was their intent with the scene. Gil Galad sends a letter out to Celebrimbor that Halbrand is Sauron. Wow, he did something right for once. And then he blames Galadriel for their current situation, which is fair. She brought Sauron to Eregion and then told him to create the rings even after finding out who Halbrand was. Gil Galad doesn't imprison Galadriel for treason like he should be, so that point it just gave him for the letter is null and void. Honestly, he should have just sent more than one letter to begin with. The guards report back that they have not found Elrond, and Galadriel says the obvious.
Escape is not his plan.
Gil Galad then replies with,
Meaning?
Gil Galad's intelligence takes another hit. Galadriel goes on to say that Elrond will go to seek out someone older and wiser than the king, committing treason and then insulting him to his face. Wow, Gil Galad, you really are a masochist. We cut back to Elrond showing Cirdan the elven rings, then we get these banger lines.
I have seen Celebrimbor's work before. He is remarkable.
He is.
They say about the mastersmith who had to be told what an alloy is. Sauron did touch the piece of mithril used to create the Three Rings last season, so since a certain scene in a later episode heavily implies that this is how Sauron is corrupting the rings as he's making them, there's actually room for doubt. Elrond is implying that the Three Rings being made is part of Sauron's plan, so shouldn't you all be worried that he wanted them made like Elrond is? This is the problem with creating the rings out of order. You destroy the whole narrative of Sauron deceiving everyone. Elrond has the based opinion, destroy it! And Cirdan has to chime in on the part of the writers and tell Elrond that this is a no-no because we need the War of the Last Alliance to happen. Cirdan goes into exposition mode but is cut off by the Popo arriving outside. Galadriel goes in to talk to Elrond.
Elrond, if I fail, the High King will see you removed by force.
Worst negotiator ever.
With three, there is balance. Don't you remember?
How could he forget? You deceived him into agreeing to make the Three Rings as part of Sauron's plan. He only found out who Halbrand was because you guys don't know how to properly recycle. Elrond then goes on to tell Galadriel the obvious, that the rings are all a part of Sauron's plan and that she was an idiot for backing out of going to Valinor. Galadriel then retorts with,
I did what I felt was right, and time alone will reveal whether that was folly or wisdom.
These writers really are that full of themselves. Galadriel goes along with Sauron's plan because in the end he will be defeated, so you will have made the right choice all along? That's not how that works. Bilbo showing mercy to Gollum was a seemingly insignificant choice in the moment since Bilbo already had the ring, but it was a show of Bilbo's morality and he chose to do the kind thing, and that little show of mercy turned out to save the world. That is a beautifully subtle setup for an enormous and epic payoff. Galadriel deciding to still make the rings despite it being in Sauron's interest that she makes those rings directly leads to the villain's plans coming to fruition and causing all the pain and suffering that will come to pass, which could have all been avoided had she done the sensible thing. Galadriel realizes that Elrond gave Cirdan the rings and he has already sailed out to sea. Cirdan gets out to the spot where he could drop the rings to destroy them. He proceeds to pour them into his hands instead of directly into the sea after awakening wave hits him, so he can stare at them longingly and definitely not throw them in, because you know, the sea's always right or some shit like that.
The sea is always right! The sea is always right!
Shut the f up. The wave part isn't what bothers me. We have another issue here, guys. This is not good. The 3 elven rings do not work like the One Ring. They do not tempt those who look upon them. I swear, every scene with Gil Galad is literally just here or in like one single room. Gil Daddy announces that the Eldar must leave Middle-earth or perish. Cirdan shows up with the 3 rings, wearing Narya, aka the Ring of Fire, and extending the other 2 to Gil Daddy. Elrond shouts and Gil Daddy is surprised by it, the second time this has happened when it shouldn't have in this episode, causing Gil Daddy to drop the 2 rings, and what do you know, Nenya, aka the Ring of Water, falls at Galadriel's feet. Galadriel picks it up and immediately wants to put it on. Is Elrond the only person in this show that isn't tempted by these things? Seems like it, because Gil Daddy just immediately puts on Vilya, aka the Ring of Air. The sun starts to shine on them all, and the tree leaves start to regrow immediately. Oh god, no, please stop smiling so hard. It looks so unnatural and psychotic. They did it again, just not during the horse riding scene this time. Elrond is disappointed. They then rip off Peter Jackson once again.
Is there a echo in here, yes?
We then cut over to Celebrimbor for the first time, who gets told he has a messenger from the Southlands. Is Celebrimbor knowingly letting him in? I just binged the other 2 episodes. I know what happens, because right after finishing episode 1 and realizing I spent almost 2 hours writing down notes just on the pointless 20-minute prologue that breaks even the show's own canon, I just binged the other 2 right after and called it a night. Based off this video, you can probably imagine I'm not a fan of this show, but when they do write stuff I don't mind or actually like, I will try and point it out where I can, because at the end of the day, I want this show to be good.
But
I'm not going to tolerate terrible writing and characters just because Lord of the Rings is in the title. Although if later said scenes lead to idiotic payoffs or characters making decisions that don't make sense, like has been happening in this entire show, I will be calling it out. I decided to join the fray because I love Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings and what this story represents to so many fans out there who are absolutely watching this world be butchered in front of their very eyes. I'm Riff, and unfortunately I'll be back to review episode 2.